I need to put down under new business meeting date change for March. Okay. So seeing that, any other? No. Okay. The agenda is approved as amended. Okay, we have two speakers today. Our first speaker will be Dan. Where we going? And I'm going to move, so you could come right up in here. Oh, you have about 30 minutes, Dan, right there.
Anywhere you want.
All right. Well, how's it going, everyone? I'm Dan Wolk. I'm a council member from the city of Davis. I'm also deputy county counsel for the county of Solano. I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience here. I've been up here a number of times, but literally just last Thursday at the Lake County Central Committee meeting over in Lakeport, so saw a number of you there and had a great discussion there. And I grew up in Davis, which is of course in Yolo County, and as a kid I would come up to Lake County fairly often, sometimes to Lake County itself, sometimes as part of camping along Crash Creek, or sometimes passing through over into Fort Bragg. But since I've run, of course, I've been coming up here a lot more, and I've really enjoyed meeting a lot of you, and also it's been great hearing from you about the issues that Lake County is dealing with. And Lake County is dealing with some real serious issues, actually. And I was just talking with Jerry Spittler about actually the water level in the lake. It's not too bad. I mean, when you compare it to, say, Folsom Lake in the Stroud, it's great to have this rain, but it is lower, and 17 agencies rely on that lake. And the lake is really what makes Lake County, of course, Lake County. And so there are definitely pressures there. But there are other challenges that Lake County is facing. Lake County has the highest morbidity rate of any county in the state, and also it has one of the highest poverty rates of any county in the state, and it's got infrastructure problems. And those issues are really why I'm running for the state legislature. For years, California has been a place where folks could achieve their dreams, and our state government, through investing in public education, through investing in our public infrastructure, through investing in our environment, in our economy, in our social safety net, was able to help facilitate those dreams. But years of disinvestment, predating even the Great Recession, has left many wondering whether that California dream is achievable for the next generation. And I have a personal stake in this because I have two young daughters. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and I'm worried about the California that they're going to grow up in and inherit, and I feel like it's incumbent on us as policymakers to reinvest and to ensure that they have even better opportunities than previous generations. And just to throw out some statistics, I've already given you some about Lake County, but just looking more broadly, Lake County does have a high poverty rate, but the poverty rate throughout California is 1 out of every 4, which for a state as wealthy as California is appalling. Over half our fast food workers are on public assistance. It's great that we raised our minimum wage to $10, but in real terms, it's actually declined over the years. Since it should be something like 22 at this point if we've kept up with inflation. So there are a lot of these pressures that we're dealing with, and I know that you're feeling them here in Lake County in particular, as I felt. And as I toured Lake County, as I travel around Lake County and talk to a lot of folks, and as I travel throughout this 4th Assembly District, I'm hearing those same concerns. And so what I would like to do is, if I got into the legislature, certainly address those concerns. And those concerns are really Lake County concerns. I mean, they span throughout the 4th Assembly District, but you're feeling them particularly here. And I would really like to work with you once I got in the legislature to address those. And I'll just give you some few examples of how I would. First of all, in terms of public education, I think we need universal preschool. It's something I've called for. It's something President Obama called for in his State of the Union address a year ago. He's run into the awful roadblock that is the Republican Congress, and it's really important for us policymakers in California to step up and create that program. It'll be expensive, but I can't think of a better investment to make, honestly, in our society as universal preschool. Study after study shows that children who are ill-prepared for kindergarten have trouble catching up. And that, of course, leads to problems down the road, not just in terms of crime, but the widening achievement gap, which you certainly see up here in Lake County. Wally Holbrook, who is one of my supporters, who's the county superintendent of schools, has created this hub program, which many of you are familiar with, and it's sort of integrating school services and county services. It's a wonderful idea, but and he sees firsthand that real achievement gap and the real struggle that schools face up here, and that's something that I would certainly address. But it goes beyond just pre-K. It goes throughout. I'm glad that the governor and the state legislature are putting more funding into schools through this new LCFF funding program, and that's going to certainly help. And then as you get into higher education, we have to ensure that folks are able to afford going to community college, afford going to the CSU and UC systems, and they're really out of reach for a number of students right now. And then those who can go are graduating with enormous debt, which is, of course, altering what they can do afterwards. But what I'm talking about goes beyond schools. It goes into our infrastructure, and you don't have to look very far here in Lake County to see that we've got infrastructure problems. But Lake County is not alone. You see it. We see it in the city of Davis. We're working on the council to invest more in our roads. The state and federal government have just pulled back dramatically in terms of road investments to the point of zero, and it's really becoming it's becoming a local burden, as are so many other things becoming a local burden. But really, road investment is where you certainly see it. And but it goes beyond roads. I mean, there are parts of the Central Valley where people cannot drink their water because it's contaminated, and the American Society for Civil Engineers has said there's something like $44 billion worth of improvements that we have to do in terms of our local water supply to provide drinking water to people. And many of these communities are low income, and I really led the effort we're 100% reliant on groundwater in Davis, and Woodland is the same. And we joined in an effort to get water from the Sacramento River. And not all communities are able to do that, and especially communities in the Central Valley, and they're facing those pressures. And one of the things that I do work on in my day job as a county counsel for the county of Solano is I am their water lawyer, essentially. I work on the Delta. And the Delta is this, I mean, how many of you are familiar with what's going on in the Delta? Yeah, so you should, because it literally touches Lake County through Cache Creek, which flows right from the lake all the way into the Delta. And so it's not happening far off the lake, it's really happening to a key river that comes out of Lake County. And what's the governor's plan, which I strongly oppose, this BDC plan, which is this peripheral canal redux that he wants to do, which is basically a water grab by Southern California. I'm strongly opposed to it, and I think that we here in Lake County, and we all over the 4th Assembly District, particularly the ones that physically are in the Delta, like Yolo and Solano, really need to be strongly in opposition to it. So I'm worried about what that plan is going to do to Lake County, but certainly throughout the 4th Assembly District. And there are a number of other issues that I would really like to see us pursue in the legislature. I mean, I've talked about a few of them. We really do need to address income inequality. That has been growing. The ACA will help in terms of allowing folks to get access to health care who didn't before, but undocumented immigrants are not covered by the ACA. That's an area we need to focus on. But not everyone is going to necessarily even benefit from ACA. Ultimately, we do need to move to a single-payer system. Politically, it's difficult, but the ACA is at least a step in that direction. But income inequality in general is just a really big issue that even with our economic uptick that we've had, our income inequality has grown. And again, it gets back to how I think that we as a state have kind of gone away from where we were, and we have to get back and get even better than where we were. And it's really key, and folks like you are going to be helpful in doing that, and I would love to work with you in the Assembly to make that happen. And I want to get to Q&A, so just one last thing. This is a strongly Democratic district, okay? And there are 4 candidates in this race, okay? And we need a representative from this district who is progressive, who is strongly Democratic, and I believe, and who has district-wide support and can win this. And there are folks trying to play in this race, Republican interests trying to play in this race, and try to make it more moderate, more Republican than it should be. And it's really critical for folks like you, especially you delegates, and I know I have the support of a number of you, to ensure that we rally behind and coalesce around a candidate who is progressive, who is strong on the issues, who has a bold vision, can make things happen, and has district-wide support. Now I have some, and I believe I am that person, and I have some materials that I think are back there, and you'll see that actually this week I announced we got State Superintendent Tom Torlickson's endorsement, which is wonderful, but he's just one of a ton of endorsements that we've had, both certainly from here in Lake County, but all over from throughout the district, and at the state level, including State Senator Darrell Steinberg and future Senator Pro Tem Kevin De Leon. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I don't know if that's how we're going to do this, but anyway, I would love your support.
Any questions?
How do you see attacking the problem of inequality?
Well, inequality is...
Repeat the question.
No, the question was how do we attack the problem of inequality? And it takes, I mean, both at the federal level and the state level, it's a multi-pronged approach. So you've got to bulk up the social safety net. Okay, we can't be cutting food stamps, which is what we do now. We can't be cutting healthy families. We can't be cutting Head Start. So you've got to at least have that, and then you've got to look at raising the minimum wage. So the legislature and the governor, I totally support them. It's going to go up to $10, but that is too low. And President Obama in the State of the Union is going to raise it to $10.10. So already the federal government's going to be higher than the state. So you've got to look at raising that, and then of course you've got to lift the economy. And we're certainly seeing that in California. California has done pretty well in terms of job growth lately, but we've got to also lift the economy there. So it's a multi-pronged approach to really get at income inequality. Yeah.
Lincoln basically established the land grant system because he believed that college should be free for people that can't afford it otherwise. The University of California system was part of that land grant system, and it used to be that tuition was free. So this idea of having $30,000 debts, once you graduate, didn't exist before Reagan. Okay, the idea is you go to college free, you get a good job, you pay taxes. Those taxes come down to help the next generation. Reagan came along and said, people should pay it for themselves. We're all in this alone. And I'm wondering how you feel about taxes, because that seems to be the four-letter word. The money has gone up to the top. It seems like the quickest way to get the economy going again is to tax and get that money coming down for jobs, government jobs, whatever, to get the money back down here. Just wondering how you feel about any of that.
Oh, I completely agree. There's a lot to your question. I actually joined ASME's local 3266, which represents some UC employees. They had a strike at the UC campus about a couple months ago, and I joined them on their picket line. One of their concerns was the exorbitant pay that you see to UC executives, and just some of the working conditions that you see in the UC system. That's just the UC system. And they have actually this great pamphlet, which actually that came from the local AFT, a different union rep, but it nonetheless dealt with the general idea of inequality at UC, and it's pretty striking. And I was actually just reading it last night. I got it this week, but it's pretty striking how there is that inequity at the UC system. And I certainly heard it from those folks right there on the picket line that I was with, who were really concerned about that. And it wasn't just one area of UC. It was healthcare workers, it was food service workers, but again, it was kind of a lot of the low income earners who aren't making as much as the vice chancellors or the chancellors of the UC system. So you certainly see that. And absolutely, taxes, to that part of your question, taxes are not a four-letter word for me. And I realize a lot of what I've talked about in terms of reinvestment is going to be expensive. And certainly we need to look at raising the economy and increasing the economy to get that revenue coming in. But we do have to explore tax initiatives. I mean, Prop 30, which many people in this room I'm sure helped with, but certainly the Democratic Party was key, and Labor as well, is a temporary tax increase, and now we're seeing the benefits of it in terms of more revenue coming in. We can talk about restoring programs, we can talk about new programs like universal preschool, which is something I'd like to see. So, absolutely, I mean, we have huge income inequality in our society, and we do need to address these things that I mentioned, and certainly taxes is part of that.
Any more questions?
Thanks. I really enjoyed it. So, know that there are delegates in the room that I've spoken to, so we have ballots, so come up to us afterwards and we'll get those. But thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Okay, now Dan Wolk is a candidate for the 4th Assembly District, and that's who just spoke, and his topic was restoring the California dream. Now we'll be hearing from Joe Krovoza, and his topic is building on my record to represent 4th Assembly District.
Very good. Thank you very much, Johnny. It's wonderful to be up here again. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about who I am and my values and the pathway that has brought me to ask all of you for your consideration of support for me for my potential service in the State Assembly. I'm a lifelong Democrat. My mother was a school teacher, and my father was always involved in one community group after another. And my wife Janet and I raised 2 daughters in Davis. My youngest is still in college. My oldest is now a inner city school teacher in Nashville, Tennessee. So I'm very proud to have been kind of the bridge, if you will, between my mother as a teacher and my oldest daughter as a teacher. And that kind of gives me a lot of ideas on education, which I'll talk about a little bit more. I attended a trade technical high school. When I was growing up, I was kind of a bored junior high school student who was getting good grades, but really wasn't seeing how I was connecting into the educational system. And so I went to a trade technical school in Rosemead, California, and I studied electronics. And at that school, we had electronics and photolithography and metallurgy and mechanical and auto and drafting and one other shop that I can never remember because there were 7 and I can only get to 6 fingers when I go through and do it. But that gave me an incredible perspective on how people mature and learn and get engaged young to learn a trade and so on. I went to Pasadena City College. I'm a community college product, and when I was there I served for a year as the student on the board of trustees, and so really rolled up my sleeves there. And obviously we've got the UB College's Clear Lake campus here, and Art Pimentel, his good friend, is the dean there, so I understand your community college system well. I then graduated from Occidental College in Southern California, and went to work at Caltech at Stanford doing educational fundraising. Came up to UC Davis for law school, and in law school I studied natural resources law, and particularly water law, and published in environmental water law and practiced water law for a couple of years. But then I came to UC Davis, and for the last 17 years at UC Davis I've been part of building our clean transportation and our energy efficiency programs, and that puts me in contact with a tremendous network of academics and activists working for the environment. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. But as our daughters were heading off to college, I decided, I care about Davis. We're not going anywhere. I care about civic engagement, and I want to make sure that I can give back. So I decided to run for city council. I'd never been on the ballot before, never run in Davis, of course, before, and very pleased to be elected. And since January 2011, I've been serving as mayor of the city of Davis and really rolling up my sleeves with our staff and our city manager to move issues forward at the city level. The reason I'm running now is because as mayor of Davis, I've been able to make a difference. We've taken on so many big issues that I'll talk some a little bit about here, but I've been able to make a difference. That's the number one reason, and I know I can do that in the 4th Assembly District. Second is, this is a spectacular district. I love the 4th Assembly District. It is agriculture, it is big, it is spread out, it is smart communities that care about the environment, it is social services, it is education. It's the UC system, the CSU system, because we stretch all the way over to Roanoke Park and we pick up Sonoma State. And we've got 4 community colleges, and we all care about K through 12, of course, here as well. So I want to represent this district, and I know I've got the experience to be able to do that. So here I am before all of you, and I want to talk about a couple of areas now. I want to start talking about education. One of the things I didn't mention to you yet was that for 7 years, I served on the California Student Aid Commission. That was all about fighting for Cal Grant A, B, and C, and it was at a time when the loan programs were just getting started in the state of California. The federal loans were just coming and being administered. We had all kinds of students defaulting. Bill Bennett, who was then Secretary of Education, was criticizing students for defaulting. And actually, I went with a student delegation back to Washington, D.C. We met with Bennett right as he was doing all of his bashing of students. And actually, one of the fun stories was I was right next to Bill Bennett, and I don't think he realized it, but he kicked me really hard under the table in the middle of the meeting. And I said, okay, all right, that must have been an accident, but it felt a little bit funny. But what we realized then, it's just a small little story, a little bit of a side story, but what we realized then was that students were being bashed for defaulting on their loans when we weren't administering those loans in exactly the same way that any consumer loan would be administered. So student graduates, moves once or twice. We're not applying any what they call skip tracing to find where they are. And then lo and behold, they're in default. Well, it's not because they're a deadbeat, it's because the program wasn't set up to track it all the way through. So in any event, that's just a little story, but this tells you a little bit that from the very beginning of my role in public service and government, I've kind of been out there and doing all these kinds of different experiences. On the city council in Davis, we have a city schools 2x2, which is 2 members of the city council, 2 members of the school district. And if you don't have this in your cities here in Lake County, you should get it going, because there's tremendous opportunities when government starts talking to each other. When we're doing the same thing, we're mowing the same lawns, we're fixing some of the same stuff. We're figuring out how to make the parks work for the schools and for the community. In Davis, we've always had the schools and the cities working close together, so I've been serving on that for a number of years. So, but in education, there's 2 big things going on. One is the Common Core, right? And so there's a new realization that we need to be not teaching to the test. We need to be making sure that the kids that come out of school know how to solve problems. And so I look forward to following the implementation of the Common Core and making sure that that goes well. We've also got this LCFF, the local funding formulas, right? One of the things we're going to be able to do with the LCFF is make sure that schools have increased incentives to make sure disadvantaged kids are showing up to class, right? Schools are going to start getting paid more to make sure that the kids that we want to make sure don't fall into the achievement gap show up. And so that's, again, something else that I'm going to be watching very, very closely. Another piece that I want to talk about in education is English learners. We have a whole new curriculum in California for English learners. And as I've looked into this, we're not supporting the teachers to learn how to implement the curriculum for the English learners. And so there's these reports out that the teachers are just ignoring what the state of California did because we've kind of got an unfunded mandate. We're telling them this is what you have to do, but then we're not giving the teachers the resources. So that's another example of how legislators and government need to really kind of look at what's happening at the local level and then drill down and make sure that we're rolling up our sleeves and getting the resources where we want to make things change. made a little bit of a reference to vocational education and my own experience in that. And I absolutely believe K through 12 and K through 14 at the community colleges, we have to be thinking about how education is preparing us, and not just youth, but retraining adults to make sure we're teaching to the trades of the future, whether it's healthcare or food service, local distribution of food, whether it's energy efficiency, solar, the clean economy, the geothermal that's up here, all of the kinds of changes that we're seeing in the economy. Are we really making sure that we're thinking about where we're going to train people properly? And that's going to be top of mind for me when I find myself in the assembly. So that's a little bit on education. I want to talk about infrastructure. I am chair of the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency. Okay, this is our $240 million joint project. And let me tell you, doing infrastructure, big infrastructure, that changes communities is not easy. And when you're on a board like this, and when you're chair, every week, every 2 weeks, there's another little glitch. There's another state agency that didn't respond. You know, there's another financing problem that we might not be able to solve. And so I'm very, very proud that this experience, being on the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency board and seeing this project come forward in Woodland and Davis, has shown me firsthand. I mean, it's the emails that I get at 3:30 in the afternoon and I'm responding to at 10:30 at night that tell me how we really do this. And I want to figure out how we're going to do infrastructure across this whole great 4th Assembly District. For your roads, for the water projects, and quite possibly to repair and restore Clear Lake as well. The other piece I want to talk a little bit more about is social services. So we know about income disparity. We know that we need to help all people. We know we need to create the equality that we want. In Davis, there's an initiative called Raise Davis. And there's a group of people that are supporting raising the minimum wage in Davis to $15 an hour. And I haven't taken a position in favor of that. And since I took a position in favor of that, I've been hearing from other elected officials around the 4th Assembly District that say, yeah, that's right. You know, if we're talking that the $10 an hour minimum wage is not enough, then let's take a stand. Let's say we're in favor of 15. Let's move the needle. Let's make everybody a little bit uncomfortable. Let's make the state of California say, well, I'm not sure a local can really do that. That's good. That's the role of a leader, is to get out there. And so I'm in favor of that. I'm going to be talking about that as we go forward. And that's real, and I'm proud of that. I want to tell you, when I was in college, some of you know these books, right? The poor pay more. The poor pay more, right? So they don't buy in bulk. They don't have access to bigger markets and so on. And we have to keep that in mind. That was a great book. Another book is Nickel and Dimed, right? Those are the things that I read that influenced my thinking on this. And I'm always going to be thinking about the working poor, the people that are playing by the rules. They're working hard, but it's still incredibly hard to get by. And you can only do that by looking at the cost of where you live and the salary that you're making. Healthcare, affordable healthcare, right? The ACA is coming along, right? But we've already discovered that it's got holes in it. Right? So we all know about the 29ers, right? The 29ers are the people who, the Walmarts, you've got your Walmart right here, they're only letting these people work 29 hours because if they only work 29 hours, they can't get the benefits of the Affordable Care Act, right? So AB 880, which is on life support in the legislature, I'm a strong supporter of AB 880. And if you care about the working poor, then you care about AB 880. And you care about every worker at your Walmart here who wants to make sure that they've got good health care, right? And that's just good for society overall. And I'm certainly in favor of moving toward single payer. What's great about the Affordable Care Act is we're going to get these exchanges going. We're going to get competition going within the system. And then that really does put us in a great position to move gradually toward single payer. And in 2-3 years, there's kind of some checkpoints where the state of California can kind of jump into the Affordable Care Act and start expanding its reach. And I'm very excited to be potentially in the legislature during that starting to happen. I see that coming, and people who are advising me on healthcare saying you're going to have a great opportunity in a year or two to do it. One of the great things about California too is that we've had a pretty good, not a perfect, but a pretty good implementation of the Affordable Care Act, and we know that Californians want to extend it. So we're going to be leaders again in California in this regard. Now I want to talk a little bit about the environment. If any of you have read my material, you know that I am a huge, huge environmentalist. This comes from my youth as a Boy Scout, as an Eagle Scout, hiking and camping, and an appreciation for the outdoors, right? But then it comes studying natural resources in law school. It comes from my 20-plus years of community volunteerism in Davis. Had to do with a number of environmental organizations. One was called the Puda Creek Council. And when Lake Berryessa came in the late 1950s and filled up in 1961, 1962, there was no consideration whatsoever for what the in-stream flow needs of the environment would be below Lake Berryessa. And as a consequence, when we hit some droughts in the late 80s and early 90s, there's a big 7-year drought, people were driving their SUVs on the 23 miles of downstream Puda Creek that had become, completely dry, right? And it was actually the children of the city of Davis that brought all this to light. And so these kids in Davis go to what's called Camp Puda. It's a city summer camp. And the kids came home, and they used to be able to go to Camp Puda and ride their canoes, all over the creek. And they loved it. This is a great outdoor experience. It's just a couple miles from the main part of Davis. And the kids started coming home. They go, "Mom, Dad, this is really gross. There's mud, and there's dead flapping fish, and there's birds eating the fish." And that was the birth of the Puda Creek Council, and parents coming together and saying, we're going to protect our environment. But what resulted in is the Puda Creek Council bringing a lawsuit that then the city of Davis and the university joined. And in the end, we won at Sacramento Superior Court. And then we were challenged, and in the appeals process, we negotiated out 50% more water for the lower creek. And now the creek is always permanent, all the way down to the delta. The kids enjoy it at Lake at the Puda Creek area and so on. But I'll tell you a little bit of a story, and that is we were getting to the end of the negotiations, and I was the lead negotiant for the Puda Creek Council, and everybody wanted to settle, right? We had been in litigation for 6 years, and then we had been negotiating for 3 years, and everybody was getting tired. And I walked into a room, and there was a settlement proposal on the table, and everybody was like, okay, good, it's looking good. These people have looked at it, and we've vetted this, and we've checked the numbers, and we've run the hydrology, right? And I noticed there were no flows for anadromous fish. There were no flows for the historic salmon that used to come up Puda Creek. Everybody wants to settle. There's probably 8 people in the room. The university wanted to settle. The city wanted to settle. Puda Creek Council was the environmental group. And I said, the Puda Creek Council will not settle this lawsuit until there are flows for anadromous fish. And that set off another 6 weeks of negotiations, and we got it done. And now, almost every year, but 5 out of 6 or something like that, the salmon run back up Puda Creek. And I'm very, very proud of that. And that's what you get when you've got a real strong environmentalist that's willing to kind of put their foot down and say that's what we've got to do. So that's a little bit of my community involvement in the environment. I was also part of co-founding a group called Davis Bicycles, because we felt that the city of Davis was kind of resting on its laurels in terms of encouraging low-cost bike transportation. But let me tell you what my day job is. My day job is at UC Davis in our clean transportation and our energy efficiency programs. And that's very, very environmental. We work with lots of state agencies. It's about $14 million worth of grant revenue. We've got about 150 graduate students doing work in this area. This is a tremendous network of experts that I've developed at UC Davis that I work with all of the time. And I would bring their input to all the problems we have in the 4th Assembly District. But I'll also tell you, I've stopped talking about a lot of environmental issues from simply the perspective of preserving the environment, and thinking much more about what it has to do to saving people money. So energy efficiency and clean cars now are about putting money back in our wallets, right? Doing retrofits under what's called Prop 39 for our schools the more we can help schools save because they get rid of energy hogging, HVAC units and so on. That's money in the classroom because that's money they don't have to spend maintaining their buildings. So there's a lot of what we call co-benefits from the environmental movement that we need to care about. For Clear Lake, if we protect Clear Lake, that's tourism, that's public health, right? That's enjoyment for everybody, so we need to care about Clear Lake. Let me tell you about one of my endorsers, my campaign, donor to my campaign, and that's Charles Goldman. Charles Goldman is easily the top limnologist in the world, easily. He's the guy that came into Lake Tahoe on the lake clarity issues at Lake Tahoe and put together the whole research program. He's the kind of environmentalist that I know, I've known for years, and I work with. And I talked to Charles. I said, Charles, if I get elected to the 4th Assembly District, I want you to work with me to start thinking about what we can do up in Clear Lake for Clear Lake, just like what you've done in Lake Tahoe. And Charles said, I've got some ideas, Joe. I've talked to people up there and so on, so I'd love to engage. So it's just energy, right? We need to reach out to people like that and bring them together. So that's me on the environment, and I'll absolutely be there. And Davis, a whole host of things we've done for solid waste reduction. We've banned plastic bags. We've regulated wood smoke where it was becoming quite a nuisance in nearest neighbor impacts and things like that. So I'm very, very proud of that. Finally, I want to tell you that my being tells me that institutions matter. And so when I hear people talk about problems, I think about what I can do for them right away. There's no question about that. But I also think about, why is there not an institution? Why is there not a mechanism that solves that? And sometimes that mechanism is a nonprofit organization that's just constantly at the local elected officials and raising issues. But sometimes, like in the case of Tahoe, it took a special land use authority around the lake to make sure that there was kind of a comprehensive plan that business and the environmentalists could get behind, that made sure that the erosion didn't come into the lake and reduce the quality. So if you get me into the assembly, I'm going to be thinking about what those long-term institutions are that are really going to solve the problems of the 4th Assembly District. Not just a quick fix, and not always just looking to Sacramento, right? There's going to be limits on Sacramento with regard to money and time and attention. So my campaign is going very, very well. I have a spectacular set of volunteers. I'm very proud that at this point in the campaign, we have nicely over 600 total contributors to the campaign, 600 individual donors to the campaign. We believe that may be more donors than any other assembly race in the state of California. And it's hard to check that out because people don't have to report all contributions less than 100. Over half of our donations are from people who've given $100 or less. We're at $218,000. We're doing extremely well in the fundraising. These are all people that I've worked with, that I know, that I've worked with on projects, that I call up and say, would you do 100 for me? And they say, I'll do 250. And I say, will you do 500 for me? And they say, I'll do 1,000. And so I truly believe I have got a grassroots campaign that is responding to someone who is a community volunteer and cares deeply about making change. So I'd love to have your support. I care about everybody in this room. I care about walkers, I care about phone callers, I care about $5 contributions. I've got contributions from $1 to $4,100, and I love them all equally. So delighted to be here. I'll take a few questions, and thank you all very much for hearing me out. So thank you.
You mentioned during your talk, you said you want to protect Clear Lake. What do you want to protect Clear Lake from? And what do you think is one of our greatest threats, or if you're protecting?
Right. I mean, it's the degradation of the clarity. It's the algae that's building up, and I think then and also kind of around it, we want to create a great interface between the the human and the natural.
I just want to let you know that we are faced with the quagga mussel infestation, and that's one of our greatest threats at this point for the ecology here. So that's something you probably should maybe look into a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've read about that, and actually on Puda Creek we had a very similar. We've got this New Zealand mud snail, And this is very difficult. I mean, once these non-native species get in, and they're transported by fishermen's boots and different mechanisms. Obviously, the pike in California have been a problem as well. They're very, very difficult. So, how we get on top of that? Once the cat's out of the bag, so to speak. But I think you do have a lake up here that there were efforts in 2003, 2004. Maurice and I were talking about it a little bit that got started. But I think we need to build that momentum. And here's where again I would just repeat my emphasis on what are the institutions that we can get started with a modest amount of money that engage the citizens. I met a gentleman at the Clear Lake Farmers Market who was telling me all about how he organizes scouts just to get out there and do the cleanup. Well, those scouts getting out there to do the cleanup, are then your advocates, 3 years down the road or 5 years down the road to be showing up to the city councils to make the parks nicer. So, we've seen this in Yola County where, you just start with a small set of people, and once they catch fire, through the generations it gets better and better. Yeah?
Just to take you back to the quagga mussel, that is one of the reasons we have a tax measure going on our ballot in June. So it is a big threat to this county and the existence. So
Understood.
It's back to the threat.
Perfect.
And just get you back on topic real quick. So somebody else can ask a
Good,
question.
thanks. See over here? Great.
Yes, can you explain the Walmart 29 issue a little better and how AB 880 will affect it?
You bet, you bet. So, the way it works is that if someone works less than 30 hours, then the Affordable Care Act does not have to, doesn't kick in. And so those people get covered on, Medicaid, right? So basically, you wanna reach lower down. So you might have had somebody who was, working 32 hours, and now all of a sudden, boom, they're pushing them down to 29 to make sure that they don't have to give them health care. So we want to extend that down probably at least to 20 or lower to make sure that those people have to be covered. And look, we all know the reason of the Affordable Care Act, right? The more we're all covered, the more we spread out the costs, right? The more we keep people healthy, the more they're going to get to their jobs, the more they're going to be productive, and so on. So that was just that under 30 was the dividing point. And what we're seeing in the Walmarts and Targets is they're changing employees, and they're only hiring now people who are 29 and less, and they're trying to push people down below 30. Well, that's terrible. People are getting fewer hours and no health care, so they're hit twice. Who else? I'm sorry.
880, how will that, what is?
It ends that loophole. So, Anybody else? What else we got here? Yeah.
Now, this question is going to be for both of you,
Great.
Dan and Joe. I firmly believe that the leaders, our elected officials, really set the tone for how much attention we get up here in Lake County. All over the state, when we mention Lake County, if you mention Lake County, it's never that up. It's always, Lake County. How often are you planning on being in Lake County to direct attention to Lake County and get some of the things done that you talked about?
Right. So, Dan, you want to go first, or I'll go first? But, I guess I would say I'm representing 100% of Lake County. This district actually includes 6 counties, 2 of which are the 100% level, Napa and Lake. Absolutely once a month, hopefully every 2 weeks. I want to have 2 councils when I'm serving. One would be a local government council from throughout the district, so we kind of find the commonality of the local governments, and whether it's going to be city managers or city council members and so on. So Lake would be part of that. And I want to do the same thing in education. I want to have educational leaders, teachers, and board members all kind of coming together. We should have them, meet up in Lake County some and so on. But what I will tell you is I love the big breadth of the ag and the diversity of this district. I absolutely feel that. I've come up here to kayak Cache Creek, and we put in on the North Fork, and we put down into Yolo and so on. I love it up here. I'm a county hike pointer. It's one of the things that I do, one of my quirky little hobbies. And I go with friends and we hike to the highest point of all the California counties. And so, it's top for Clear Lake or for Lake County and so on. So, that's the best I can do to that without, projecting out before. But I will tell you, I don't shy from getting up here, and I love getting up here. Leslie is one of my campaign coordinators. We're driving up here, and I go, "This is beautiful." I love this. So, fair enough. Dan? Sorry, your question.
No, go ahead.
So yeah, I think Lake County, I think it's a great question because Lake County has been ignored really by its representatives. It's shifted districts and they've had representatives who are otherwise strong, but they're strong in other areas, and they're not. Lake County has essentially been ignored by not only the legislature, by the representative, by Sacramento, and that gets back to what I was saying before. And the muscle issue to hit one. I mean, leaders in Sacramento need to know those issues in Sacramento if they're going to be able to address those challenges. But that's just one challenge. I mean, there's all these other challenges that I was mentioning before about poverty and morbidity rates, and it's a wonderful county. I mean, I love it up here. I grew up coming up here. It's a wonderful place, and it's just unfortunately been given short shrift. And at least for me personally, it truly would be a main, and I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking to a Lake County group, I say it in other places, is that I think the issues in Lake County are the kind of issues that you're seeing statewide, and certainly throughout the Fourth Assembly issue, this issue of income inequality, poverty, environmental concerns. And I mean, Lake County, wonderful place, got its set of challenges. Those are the challenges that's exactly why I'm running. And the policies that I'm going to pursue in Sacramento are going to address those issues. Now, it just so happens that Lake County has maybe, maybe I happen to be much more interested in those issues maybe than other legislators or candidates, but that's exactly why I'm running. And so I plan to spend quite a bit of time up here, not just because I think it's a beautiful place and I really enjoy the folks that I've met up here, but because you really see firsthand those challenges, and I'm not from Lake County, I don't live in Lake County, but I truly want to be the Lake County representative that Lake County has never had. Thanks.
Any more questions for Joe? Oh, there's one.
Well, we got both of you here, and I'd love to see a debate between all of you. One issue that nobody wants to talk about is our state prisons and now realignment. And prisoners are dying from poor health care and overcrowding, and it's costing the state a fortune. And how are we ever going to fix this and help these people become members of society?
Yeah, so, I think the tide is turning between what Eric Holder's doing on the national level and what Darrell Steinberg is pushing for in some of the, it's difficult when you're settling these problems that we have in our prison system with lawsuits. Lawsuits are very binary, right? There's a judge makes a decision and it's on this side or that side. In fact, that was one of the problems with the Blue Creek issue is the judge makes a decision right here, and it's much more complicated, right? So Darrell is working very hard to try to, negotiate back and forth. But we need to make sure that when people are getting out, we've got, programs, strong programs to reduce recidivism. We've got too many people in prison that are not violent, that we're paying huge amounts of money for, that would be better on parole. As we settle into the realignment of 109, we've got opportunities to make sure that we are properly funding the counties to be able to have the programs for these people. And you can see, the bad in the realignment is just pushing, people away from the state system. The good, potentially, is that if you fund it properly at the local level, you can make sure that these people get integrated back into the community college systems and the other social services networks that are going to make sure they get jobs and they get welcomed back into society, and we don't just take them out and then put them back in. So I think we need to move more people out and use that money on the outside to integrate people into society. And there is a good trend in this direction, and it is one of the issues that I know is top of mind in the legislature, and it certainly will be for me.
Did you want me to address that?
Sure.
Okay. Or you say you agree with me.
So, yes, I actually handle realignment, so I'm a deputy county counsel for the county of Solano, so I advise our board on realignment, so I'm very familiar with AB 109 and the impact that's having on counties and on society. California is #1 in per inmate spending, and we're 49th in per pupil spending, which tells you about how we've got these just warped priorities. And what is that #1 for per prison spending? It gives us an overcrowded prison system that prison right advocates have sued on. They've won the federal court orders there. There's no getting around it. And so that's what's led to this realignment. And realignment, I support the idea of realignment. I think that the idea of moving folks from the state prisons into the county system in principle is good, but I think it raises larger issues that we have to certainly address, and that is, first of all, we have to, I think the bigger issue is that we need to provide those resources for that population once they exit the system. And California has the highest recidivism rate of any state in the nation. And Senator Steinberg, who I've spoken with just the very issue about him, he's a supporter of mine. I see exactly eye to eye with him on this. We need to invest in mental health, education, those kind of things for prisoners who are getting moved to the county level, and then usually right onto probation because the counties are having trouble handling them. And then the key is to make sure they don't get back into the system. And so I think a realignment gives us a real opportunity to do that. And the bigger opportunity that realignment does provide us is to look at our sentencing guidelines in this state, which are just, again, talked about more priorities. And we need comprehensive sentencing reform in our state. And our state legislature, because of politics, has been reluctant to really get into that. And this realignment really provides us that opportunity. So I think it's a great question. It doesn't, for such a big component of our budget, a big component of issues, it doesn't come up as much in forums as I would like. So I'm glad that you raised it.
One more question for Joe. Who was this young?
Sure.
2 areas you talked about, inequality in education, and back in the 50s and 60s we had the greatest equality in the world, actually. We had a very strong society, and now that's been turned around where it's in the other direction. A book called The Spirit Level goes into all kinds of statistics about the greater inequality, the greater problems you have. And U.S. is #1 in that area. Okay, but you talked about Common Core, and it's giving more leeway to local education agencies and so on to teach the things. What I found in talking to high school students and even community college is they don't have any understanding of how we went from the most equality to the least equality, and at the same time the per capita income for the country has increased. So there's actually more money available than ever before, but it's been, bifurcated. Is there a way, as a legislator, do legislators have any influence, say, over high school social studies classes where students are given an understanding of how the economy has been working against them, basically, so that they can, as citizens, it's one thing to have good job training, and I totally agree, but if they don't understand the forces at work, it's going to continue to get worse. Education is going to get more costly, jobs are going to get fewer until the factors that were put in place by, say, Reagan and so on, are reversed. But if they don't understand these things, they're not going to be good voters to make some changes.
So one of my absolute conclusions from seeing my daughters go all the way through our public schools in the city of Davis, which are good schools, but you still see kind of these quirks that develop, is we are not teaching financial literacy in the school. I mean, we're putting kids in calculus classes who aren't headed toward engineering, and who in this room is a non-engineer that's ever used, calculus, right, in an everyday situation, right? I mean, so I think we have to look at kind of some of the things that we are teaching and how that just does not, sync with what we can teach. It was a high school biology teacher that put the numbers on the board in one class session, I think like the second half of one class session for my oldest daughter, and showed them, if you set up a retirement account today, a Roth IRA today, and you start, at the age of 17, and you just put, $50 in a month, when you get to 65, these are the millions that you're gonna have. And Charlotte came home and she said, Dad, I'm setting up a Roth IRA, and we went right online and we found T. Rowe Price and we got the paperwork and we filled it out, and I'm very, very proud that both of my daughters have kind of nicely developed retirement accounts that they wanted to set up. But that's just the beginning, right, is to get these kids understanding, how to do a budget and so on, and how to build their wealth and so on. And I think from that extends the more macro ideas you're talking about, which is, oh, now I understand how much money people have and how they're saving and what an investment is and what the stock market really means to me and what a mutual fund is and so on.
And what tax policies do.
And what tax policies do, absolutely. So in the legislature, it's tax policy, but it's also investing in those that, can distribute the income, more appropriately. I think it is making sure we've got, living wages. I mean, that's a huge, huge part of it, right? And I think once someone's starting to pay more attention to their budget, then they're realizing, oh my gosh, look how much I have to pay for insurance, or look how much my, this and that's costing. So that's some of my thinking on it, and it just kind of comes from my own, real life experience in my family. Anything else? Thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure to be here.